Okay. So one of the guys I work with, and I apologize to my redheaded coworker, but he was going to join this stream. Uh, I don't. I mean, I don't see him on here, and that's probably because I'm fairly late getting to the stream. I tried the stream once already, and but I had to discuss. My kid just got her report card, and I had to discuss that with her. So anyways, jumping into what we're going to talk about today, I was going to talk about teachers and the education system and just some problems I see with it. Um, so, jumping right in, one of the things I notice right away with the education system, we uh, we have the government, and they typically they'll come up with laws and stuff about what can be taught or what needs to be taught or all that, all crap. But they seem very unconcerned with what I consider to be very basic things about about our, you know, they're very unconcerned with making sure that teachers have all the things they need to actually teach, with making sure that teachers are being paid all right. Um, it's not that I feel like teaching should be a lucrative job. No, I mean it's not like I feel like it should be the equivalent of being a lawyer or something, mind you. But I feel like it should. They should be paid more than they are being paid. I actually looked up the statistics on it, and typically they're making anywhere from, say, on average, from 35 to about $50,000. There are some states that pay them more, but they're not really making much, especially not for the amount of time that they're having to put in. Because let's be honest, it's not just about the time that they're putting in when they're at school. If it was just the time that they have at school, maybe I might be able to see it a little bit more. But even the time they're at school, they're having to deal with kids all day, and let's be honest, not everybody's kid is going to be someone pleasant to deal with. And especially when you get several unpleasant kids together in one class, no, that they need to be paid just for the putting up with our children for that long and trying to teach our children, uh, especially when some of our children are frustrating to teach, I'm sure. Um, but even just beyond that, you've got the time they're spending at home grading assignments, taking a look at everything that all of the different children did. Um, we're just not paying them enough. It should be we're we're not paying them enough, in my opinion, to keep it a really competitive field. It's who feels like being a teacher. That's really what it's about. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not disrespecting teachers. They try their best. They're doing, in my opinion, an amazing job. But I I feel like the field because you pretty much have to really want to be a teacher to be a teacher. It's not like anybody gets drawn into being a teacher because it pays pretty decently. If it did, I feel like more people would be drawn in, and maybe you would get some people that you know didn't feel on the outside, typically like they particularly like to teach kids, but then realized they really liked it. Um, so yeah, I don't feel like teachers are paid quite enough, and it bothers me that our government, they're very, very specific on what ought to be being taught, and making sure that people are learning all about evolution and things like that. And it's not that I don't feel those things are important, but let's start with the basic crap first, man. I mean, make sure that they're being paid decently. Make sure that they have the things they need for the classroom. Uh, I would say up to date textbooks, but at this point, honestly, and there are still plenty of schools out there that aren't using tablets and things like that. They should be using tablets. It's modern society. It's modern technology. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff. We're not making sure that our schools are really being taken care of. We've got schools that are falling down. These are not places people are going to learn anything. How much you going to learn in a building where there's a bucket in the middle of the room to catch the rainwater because the roof is leaking? Man, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and so I feel like we need to take care of the most basic things first, and then worry about what's being taught. You know, uh, we put way too much emphasis on what's being taught, on test scores and things like that. These are things I feel are important. They are important, but they have their place, and their place just happens to be after you take care of the lower level things, the more essential things, like making sure that our schools don't have too large of a class size and things like that. How large is too large of a class size? Well, honestly, in my opinion, I say anywhere between 20 to 25 students per teacher, that's probably the limit. If it's more than that, your class is too large. I mean, how are you ever going to really get to each one of those individual students and give them in any real time? You're not. It's not going to happen. Um, I also took a look at statistics to see whether or not the amount that teachers get paid is has any correlation with how well the test scores are, or just how well in general a particular state does with you know education. And honestly, what I saw is they don't correlate. They don't correlate. Um, I would assume that could be for a lot of reasons. There are some states that are spending a lot of money on on education and aren't really getting a return for it. New York was one of those. They pay their teachers actually pretty well in New York, which is good on them. I agree with that. That is a good thing to do. But unfortunately, what I saw from their statistics, they're they pay their teachers, I believe it was from one study, it said the most of any state on average in the country. I also looked at it, had a statistic where it adjusted it for, basically for the cost of living in New York. Um, and according to the adjustment for the cost of living, they were like number 11 or so. Um, but the same study also showed them as being only something like 13th or so in terms of um, test scores and just how good their schools are in general. And there are actually plenty of other examples. That's just the one I remember offhand. But several states that were paying their teachers pretty decently, but it didn't correlate into actual improvement in the classroom. Now, I can't really say I know what's going on there, but I would imagine that one of the problems with that may be that they've just, I mean, that maybe they're paying the teachers enough, but there's more to it than just that. And I just told you that you got to make sure that they've got everything they need in the classroom. You've got to make sure that they have access to the most up to date information. Um, you got to make sure that the children are actually in an environment that's conducive to learning. A 60-year-old building is probably not very conducive to them learning, especially if, I mean, there are literally school buildings where the heat barely works, or air conditioning barely works, and they need to, they ought to work. Um, Things like that, and I would imagine that some of those play into why their test scores aren't quite as good as they, possibly could be. I still feel, though, that the most important thing is making sure that our teachers are paid adequately and that they have just the basic necessities in their classroom. And honestly, like I said, today's society, a basic necessity in the classroom is a laptop, is a tablet, is technology. If you're not teaching with technology, what are the kids going to really learn? I mean, what do you think they use at home? Do you think they go home and read books? Maybe they do. It's possible, but a lot of them probably go home and read off the tablet or off a Kindle, whatever the case. A lot of what they read is probably online. Maybe they get it through their laptop computer or their desktop computer. The point is, when they get out into society, when they're adults, what are they going to use? I mean, they're not going to use like they're not going to pull out a notebook and write on notebooks. I mean, they might take notes, I guess, but if they're doing reports, things like that, they're going to be doing them on computers. They need this technology. We can afford to give them this technology. Why aren't we doing it? Why are we wasting our time making sure that everybody's complying to the same standards on what they're being taught? And to me, that's next level. Let's fix the basic stuff first, and then we'll move on to that. Um, anyway, well, it looks like my friend never joined. I'll probably have him look at the video later, but um, he had asked me to kind of shorten them, and I feel like I've probably gone over what he had recommended, so I'm going to end this here. But questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Um, feel free to disagree. I don't really care. It won't bother me. Um, if you got legitimate points to raise and you want to discuss them, or if you want me to do another live stream and discuss something you talked about or a point that you raised, let me know. I'll do it. Take it easy.